Today I'm going to talk about the story of Snapchat, a social media app that popularized ephemeral photo and video communication and now identifies as a camera company with over 300 million daily active users and a market cap of around $114 billion. The decade-old company has had a lot of highs and lows. I'm going to try and paint as wide of a picture as possible by starting with talking about the founders' backgrounds and then how they met, how they started working together, the idea of Snapchat, how it came along, the evolution, where it is now, and as much as possible in between. Quick disclaimer, all of this information is available in the public domain and online. That's where I found it. I tried to gather up as much of the information as possible, but of course a 10-year plus story is difficult to fit into one short video. As you'll see a little later on, there's also some controversy around the inception of the idea, which is later resolved, but I try and gather up the different sides of the stories in order to share one side of what could be the truth. And of course, please feel free to fact check me in the comments and let me know if there's anything that you feel that's significant that I missed out or slightly quoted miscorrectly. We're going to start by talking about the three founders that were there from the inception of Snapchat. That is Evan Spiegel, Robert Cornelius Murphy, and Frank Reginald Brown IV. We'll start with Frank, also known as Reggie Brown. Reggie was raised in South Carolina, where he attended the McCallie School, which was a private all-boys boarding school, and day high school that was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was a boarding student and achieved academic distinction. He was named the National Merit Commended Scholar and joined the National Honor Society and Cum Laude Society. He was also on the crew team. His father, Frank Reginald Brown III, went to Stanford and was a pediatrician that was working in Florence, South Carolina. Following in his father's shoes, Reggie also applied to Stanford and he got accepted, and according to his classmates, this was a really pivotal moment for him. In 2008, around the age of 18, he enrolled at Stanford University and was going to study English. Next, I'm going to talk about Robert Cornelius Murphy, also known as Bobby. Bobby was born on the 19th of July 1988 and raised in Berkeley, California. His mother, Rosie Go Murphy, was born and raised in the Philippines but immigrated to the US and worked for the government. His father, Richard Cornelius Murphy, was of Scottish, English and Irish descent, and he worked for the state of California as a government employee, so both his parents worked for the government. Bobby spent his elementary school years in the School of Madeline, a private Catholic school in Berkeley. He then went on to St. Mary's College High School, which was another private school in the area. He applied to Stanford and he got in to study maths and computer science, and he graduated in 2010. Finally, I'm going to talk about Evan Spiegel, who's more like the face of Snapchat, so there's a lot more information about him available online. He was born in LA on the 4th of June 1990 and grew up in the Pacific Palisades area in western LA. This area supposedly rivals Beverly Hills in terms of its elite status, but it's closer to more well-known beaches. Evan lived with both his parents and two younger siblings in a multi-million-pound mansion, and his mum, Melissa Ann Thomas, was known as the youngest graduate of Harvard Law School and worked as a partner at the law firm Pillsbury, Madison and Sutro. His father, John W. Spiegel, studied economics at Stanford and law at Yale University and is a partner at the law firm Mingle, Tolles and Olson. He's an extremely successful lawyer and has worked on a few high-profile deals. Evan's family were members of exclusive clubs such as tennis and yacht clubs. They had a full-time chef, a full-time housekeeper. They regularly traveled to the Bahamas and Europe and also went snowboarding in Canada by helicopter one time. He was raised attending an Episcopal church. Evan and his two younger sisters all went to the Crossroads School of Arts and Sciences, which cost around $75,000 a year and one of the top private schools in the US. A few other alumni include Jonah Hill, Jack Black and Gwyneth Paltrow. Evan mentioned that he was bullied in school for being nerdy and a bit shy, but he was best friends with his computer teacher and built his own PC by the time he was in the 6th grade. Also, his parents didn't let him watch TV until he was almost an early teenager. Every year at Christmas, their father took them to distribute food to the people in need. They were parishioners as part of the Beverly Hills Church program, and their family traveled to Mexico to build houses for the poor. His parents did this to make sure they understood how privileged they were as kids. When he turned 16 in 2006, he got his driver's license and his parents bought him a Cadillac Escalade as a birthday present. In April 2007, his parents separated and the divorce took several years, and in the summer of 2007, Evan's dad bought another mansion 4 blocks away from their house. At first, Evan was moving between his mum's house and his dad's house, but eventually he stayed at his father's house full-time during his senior year of high school. In high school, Evan worked for Red Bull as an unpaid internship. He said, "I love the brand, I love the lifestyle, and I was obsessed with the beverage. I had to be a part of it. So I found a friend who knew a guy that worked there and I begged him for a job. I called him repeatedly. We met for coffee and I agreed to do anything at all for Red Bull." He got offered a marketing internship, and this involved throwing a lot of promotional parties to help boost the brand. At this point, Evan was quite spoiled and he didn't seem to have an appreciation for money. He had asked his dad to buy him a $75,000 BMW BMW 550i to replace his 2-year-old $56,000 Cadillac Escalade, and his dad refused. By February 2008, his dad insisted that Evan go on a weekly budget of $250 per week for personal expenses. On the 12th of February 2008, Evan wrote a letter to his dad assuring him that he understood how privileged they were, how they have an amazing lifestyle, and that they lived in a bubble. He wrote an estimate that he needs at least $2,000 a month for his expenses and a $2,000 emergency fund since his life was full of unforeseen expenses. Eventually, he went to live with his mum and she leased him the BMW, but he started getting speeding tickets and things like that. Although Evan's personal life was quite turbulent, he was still a really good student. He applied to Stanford to study product design and received his acceptance letter while he was on holiday in Prague. As an undergrad, a friend of the family named Peter Wendell, who was the founder of Sierra Ventures, a venture capital firm, allowed him to sit in on a graduate level MBA class on entrepreneurship and VC at Stanford Business School. Here he was seated next to and heard talks from the biggest names in tech, people like Google CEO Eric Schmidt and YouTube co-founder Chad Hurley. One day the topic of discussion was the company Intuit, and the guest of honor was the co-founder of that company called Scott Cook. They were talking about the company's beginning and early failed attempts at raising capital. He asked questions towards the end, and Evan, who was sat at the back of the room, raised his hand. Scott said he aced it. After the class, Scott asked if he could be introduced to Evan, and he was really surprised to learn that Evan was not an MBA student. Evan says he begged him for a job and managed to work with Scott and another engineer on a project called TXT Web, which took information available online and made it accessible via SMS to people in India who didn't have broadband internet access. Evan lasted 2 months there before he decided that he had better things to work on, but also this really encouraged him to work on his own projects. Now on to how they met. Reggie, Bobby and Evan all went to Stanford together, and they were all part of the Kappa Sigma fraternity. Bobby and Evan met in 2009 when they lived across the hall from each other, but Bobby was a year ahead of Evan. Evan and Reggie met in their freshman year of university, and apparently they went abroad together or studied abroad together at some point in 2010. In the spring of 2011, Reggie and Evan were living together in the Kimball Hall dormitory. Evan was the social chair of their fraternity, and in the autumn of 2010, when they held a drunken party on a dry weekend, the administrators said that this was a recurring pattern and they kicked them out of campus. After Evan had some experience with Intuit, Bobby and him worked on a project together. In 2010, they launched futurefreshman.com, a site meant to make applying to college easier for high schoolers. It had a guide for parents, students, and counselors on how to manage their college application processes. Evan said it never really worked and nobody really used it apart from their parents. They had worked on a couple other ideas together and none of them really took off. Evan was the designer and Bobby wrote all the code for these. Future Freshman was then renamed to Toyopa Group, which later owned Snapchat. In the spring of 2011, Reggie was talking to two frat brothers, David and Zach. He was talking to them about his weekend, catching up, girls, and just general things. Then Reggie said, "I wish I could send disappearing photos." David and Zach said that was a pretty cool idea, but then they just kind of laughed it off and continued to chill. Reggie couldn't stop thinking about it, and he ran and jumped to find Evan because he knew that he was the best operator he knew, and he also knew that he had some experience. He ran into his room and just said, "Dude, I have an awesome idea." He started explaining it, saying things like, "I wish these photos I would send to girls would just disappear." Evan thought it was a brilliant idea. He kept repeating, "That's just $1 million idea." They talked about it for a while and also spoke about how recently a group of celebrity photos had just been leaked to the press, and this would have solved that problem. Reggie and Evan shook hands on working together and splitting things 50-50. Evan said he wasn't sure if it would work at the time, so it was more of an experiment. Since Evan had more experience working on Future Freshman and other projects, he would be the CEO and Reggie would be the Chief Marketing Officer, the CMO. They didn't know how to code well enough between them, so they had to hire a CTO. They made a list of the people that they knew that studied computer science in their frat, and they went to ask a couple of them, but they just rejected it. Evan decided to call and ask Bobby because he loved working with him. Evan knew that Bobby was a good programmer and called him to supposedly tell him that they should switch from working on Future Freshman to this new disappearing picture messages app, and he wanted Bobby to come and help them build it. After university, Bobby went to work for a company called Revel Systems as an engineer. At first, Bobby wasn't convinced of the idea. He was asking if people would really use it. Eventually, Evan convinced him to work on it, and they hoped that this would be their third time lucky. Their absolute first version was a website where a user would upload a photo and there would be a timer for when the photo would disappear. The website was clunky and didn't look great. They decided quickly that a mobile app would be better, easier, and more widely used by users, so they decided to build a mobile app. They sat around their dorm room thinking about which features to include, how users would use it, what it should look like, and everything in between. Evan was more of the leader in the group and tried to keep everyone focused. Reggie offered some ideas, and Bobby kept the group a bit more grounded and tended to agree with Evan on his ideas. Reggie came up with the name peekaboo.com, a play of Peekaboo, the childhood game. At one point, since peekaboo.com was taken, they were sent a cease and desist from another company who had already trademarked the Peekaboo name, so they had to change it slightly to Pictaboo. Evan designed the app, the general look, the interface, the design, and he also made a digital mock-up. Bobby put in 18-hour coding days over the next week to try and get the prototype out there. Evan enrolled in a class called Design and Business Factors, which was a class for product design majors at Stanford to come up with an idea, and a third of the course was to create a prototype and a business plan. At first, he had another idea, but he decided to change it and work on Peekaboo instead. Unlike his other classmates who were working in groups of between 3 to 5, Evan worked alone. When it came time to present, he was very confident and knew that they would love it. There were around 30 other students, 6 VCs, and 2 professors. He was very passionate, and he explained that people would have fun sending photos and images as messages. After the pitch, the response was very unenthusiastic, and allegedly one of the professors went up to him asking if he had built a sexting app. Since Evan, Reggie, and Bobby were working on it for the past 6 weeks, he didn't want to demotivate them, so when they asked him how it went, he told them it was really good. They finished working on the prototype for Peekaboo just days before the final exams. They launched as an iOS-only mobile app on the 8th of July 2011. They celebrated with a cake decorated with a ghost logo. They knew that if they got it into the hands of the right people, then it would blow up. After all, Instagram, which launched a few months prior to that, had raised a Series A, valuing the company at $25 million. They still needed to figure out how to market the app, get people to download it, test it out, and tell their friends about it. Evan approached his former fraternity. He knew that they were some of the most social people on campus, so if they could download it and they could start using it, then they could definitely encourage some people. About a dozen of the Fat Brothers downloaded it, and they were using it for the next week or so because they thought it was super cool that their friend had built this app. At the end of July, Reggie flew home to South Carolina to spend time with family and work remotely on the project. Paranoid that someone would steal their idea since they knew that they didn't have a patent, Evan asked Reggie to file a patent to protect Peekaboo. In the summer of 2011, the 3 of them stayed at Evan's dad's house in the Palisades to work on their project. Evan designed the user interface, Bobby did the coding, and Reggie was kind of left in a bit of a subordinate role. Reggie wrote some early press releases, drafted the terms of service, and also was in charge of filing the patent application. Evan also did some work on the promotional side. He messaged a blogger and he told her that he built the app with 2 certified bros that just got kicked out of a frat. The design of the ghost logo and its name were also done during this time. They called it Ghostface Chiller after the Wu-Tang Clan member Ghostface Killer. This first mobile version of Peekaboo allowed users to send photos of up to 15 seconds, and that's all it did. It gathered 127 users by the end of summer, but people still weren't really sure how to use it or what it was really meant to be for. This didn't really put them down though, although it wasn't the explosion of downloads that they expected. They knew that they were still in the early stages. Around the midsummer of 2011, Reggie started getting worried about his role in the company. He overheard Evan and Bobby talking earlier that summer about potentially replacing him, and this made him scared. Reggie decided to use the patent application as his leverage so that they wouldn't get rid of him. At this point, Reggie went back to his home in South Carolina, and so they decided to have a conference call, a 3-way chat, in order to update each other on their progress. On the 16th of August 2011, they had this conference call. Evan was pacing around his room talking on the phone while Bobby was outside and on his phone. Reggie started reading them the patent application that he was about to file. Timed, non-permanent picture messages for smartphone devices. We, Murphy, Brown, Spiegel, have invented a new method of transferring picture messages via smartphone device technology. Evan was furious. The nerve of Reggie to put Murphy, Brown, then Spiegel. He specifically told him to put Bobby down as the sole inventor because Bobby had written every line of code, which meant he invented it. And on top of that, why was Reggie ahead of him? He hadn't built a single piece of it. Evan cut Reggie off and started going in at him. Reggie didn't help. He argued back and escalated the situation. Evan demanded to know what warranted Reggie's name being ahead of his, so he asked him. Reggie started listing his contributions, the original idea, the marketing materials, to the logo. Evan interjected, furiously arguing that he had designed the logo, drawing it all in InDesign. Reggie claimed that he directed Evan's talents, and this was enough for Evan. He just hung up and just didn't want to speak to him. Bobby stayed on, listening to Reggie venting and trying to calm him down. Reggie acknowledged earlier that summer that he didn't bring as much to the table as Evan or Bobby, and he mentioned this again. Bobby asked Reggie how much equity he felt he deserved in Peekaboo, and Reggie responded that he still feels he deserves 30% since the idea was his. Bobby shut that down really quickly and said that's not going to happen. Later that night, Evan texted Reggie in apparently what was one of his last texts to Evan. Hey man, I honestly feel insulted, so I wanted to make sure I didn't want to overreact. I definitely want to continue the conversation, but it's hard when I feel so attacked. I want to make sure you feel like you are given credit for the idea of disappearing messages because it sounds like that means a lot to you. Reggie didn't respond, and Evan wanted to see the patent application, so 4 days later he emailed him again. Hi Reggie, I still haven't received a copy of the provisional patent application that was filed. Can you please send me everything that you submitted to the patent office? Thanks, Evan. Reggie replied back and was essentially refusing to share the patent application until it got accepted by the government. development. Like I told you before, Evan, I plan on sending you everything that I submitted to the patent office once they return it to me. This is a government office, and most of the time these things take a few weeks to be processed. I know it's difficult for you, but wait. Evan had no intention of waiting. Him and Bobby changed the passwords on all their accounts and the servers so that Reggie could no longer access the app, and they cut off all communication with him. Finally, they changed the name to Snapchat. One big controversial aspect about this was whenever they spoke about it in the press, they never seemed to mention Reggie's part of the story, at least at the beginning. Evan and Bobby didn't want to delay, even though Reggie was just ousted from the company. They noticed a few things that they wanted to update. Firstly, 15 seconds was way too long to send photos, so they scaled it back to 10. Also, they noticed people would write notes on a piece of paper and then take a photo of it and then send it, so they just thought, what the hell, why don't we just include text on those photos and call it captions? Also on Peekaboo, they noticed that screenshotting was a problem, so to avoid this, they built in a notification that would notify a user if their image was screenshotted. They went live a month later in September 2011, and this is known as Snapchat's official birthday. They started calling the disappearing images snaps, and this was the main functionality of the app. Evan and Bobby shared it with about 20 friends. A few weeks later, they realized that there was an influx in users, and there was an uptake in the timing of when users would be on the app, and that was between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. Turns out that Evan's mum told Evan's cousin about it, and he was at a high school in Orange County, LA, and this spread around the school through word of mouth and invites to friends, and then other high school students in Southern California started to pick it up. Evan started pitching Snapchat as a solution to social media's unforgiving nature. They had this idea about, why is everything on the internet so permanent? Why is everything written in ink? If things weren't so permanent and people knew this, would they act more natural? Would this mirror maybe more real life interactions? They wanted Snapchat to remain ephemeral in nature. There was also this idea that Facebook had gotten old and boring. People's parents were on it and they just thought something else needs to come and take over. They found that by deleting a photo after sending it, this changed what it meant to take a picture. It was no longer about saving and capturing a memory. Instead, it was about communicating. Now onto Snapchat's product development and growth. Snapchat didn't really start taking off until January 2012. A lot of people bought iPhone 4s, which had front cameras, and this was a big part of it during that time, and they shared it over the holidays through word of mouth. In February 2012, they had 40,000 users and were allegedly maxing out credit cards to pay for the service, since it was around $5,000 a month to keep the app going. Bobby reportedly used half his paycheck from Revel Systems to pay off the app's server bills until they secured venture capital funding. In April 2012, they got 100,000 users, and their server costs were only increasing. Around April-May 2012, Snapchat hits number 12 on the free iOS photo app charts in the US, and they get some mainstream media attention with an article in the New York Times. Snapchat got this reputation for being a sexting app, and this was a big thing that people knew it as. The story covered the more risque sides of Snapchat, but Evan argued that most user feedback from direct emails and Twitter posts is about sending funny faces and messages, not racy images. On April 3rd, 2012, Instagram launched their Android app. They had 30 million users on their iOS phone, but in 10 days, this user base jumped to 40 million. During that period, Facebook bought Instagram. In May 2012, just as they were about to run out of money, Barry Eggers, a venture capitalist at the firm Lightspeed Ventures, learned about Snapchat from his teenage daughter. Jeremy Liu, who was also a partner at Lightspeed and had also invested in the app Whisper, pursued Snapchat for a meeting. 25 minutes into the meeting, he said that they were ready to invest. They eventually took $485,000 from Lightspeed Ventures and an investor that was undisclosed at the time. At this point, Snapchat was processing around 25 images every second compared to Instagram, who were processing around 25 photos a second 7 months before, when it had 10 million users. After the investment, they hired a community manager as well as 2 other engineers, and the team was focusing on stabilizing their iOS application. They were also developing an Android application and looking for ways to make money. In June 2012, Evan wasn't able to complete his degree after failing 3 credits, but as soon as the investment money hit his bank account, he just dropped out of university. The university allowed him to go to the graduation ceremony and walk on the stage to collect a diploma with his friends, but he still had to pass the remaining modules, and he never did that. Him and the team moved back to his dad's house in LA, and they were hiring like hell. They planned to bring on 3 more engineers by the end of that year on top of their current team of 5. On October the 29th, 2012, Snapchat launched an Android app. iOS users had shared over 1 billion photos or snaps, processing over 231 photos shared per second, and users were sharing over 20 million snaps every day. As the team worked to build the Android app, they discovered that many Android cameras functioned differently and had black bars at the bottom and the top for picture previews, so they had a month and a half of rebuilding the camera function for the Android version to give users a better experience. By the end of 2012, they had 1 million daily active users, and they also released 10 to 15 second long video sharing. They also began prototyping monetization features. Mark Zuckerberg reached out to Evan to let him know he's a big fan of Snapchat and to meet up, but Evan was famously playing quite hard to get. Mark flew to LA to meet him, and he got a private apartment for the meeting with Evan and Bobby later down the line. Evan said that the meeting insinuated that Facebook would crush Snapchat if Snapchat didn't sell to them. When Evan rejected Mark, Evan and Bobby bought copies of the book The Art of War by Sun Tzu and gave it to their 6 employees. In December 2012, Facebook launched Poke, an iOS app for sending expiring text photos and videos, and this was a direct competitor to Snapchat. Mark was allegedly so infuriated by the conversation he had with Evan that he personally wrote the code for Poke. Mark allegedly emailed Evan on the day that Poke launched, something along the lines of, "I hope you enjoy it." And quite passive-aggressively, similar to how the Snapchat logo was placed at the front of Snapchat's office, Facebook put a Poke logo outside their office. At first, Evan was scared that Poke was going to crush Snapchat, but Snapchat quickly surpassed Poke, and now Evan refers to it as the best Christmas present that Facebook could have given them at the time. Also at that point, Snapchat users were sending 50 million snaps per day. Over the summer of 2012 throughout 2013, Evan really made an active effort to move beyond their reputation of just being a sexting app. His mindset changed and he saw how Snap could be much more than that. In February 2013, Snapchat raised a Series A of $13.5 million, led by Mitch Lasky from the VC Benchmark Capital, along with Lightspeed Ventures and SV Angel. This gave them a post-money valuation of between $60 to $70 million. Users were sending 60 million snaps a day, or about 700 snaps per second. They launched video sharing on its Android app too after 10 days of quiet beta testing. Also in February 2013, Reggie Brown, the guy that came up with the original idea that we mentioned earlier, he filed a lawsuit against Evan and Bobby and Snapchat for the equity he felt he was owed. Previously, he sent an email threatening litigation saying he would accept 20% equity but would settle for less, and he wrote, "I encourage you to think deeply about this matter." Evan's lawyers responded by accusing Reggie of a transparent and deliberate attempt to shake down Mr. Spiegel and Mr. Murphy for a share in a company to which he contributed nothing. Evan called the lawsuit utterly devoid of merit. In 2013, Snapchat also moved to an office in Venice Boardwalk, California. They also grew to a 28-person team. Snapchat was doing a lot better than Facebook's Poke, but a lot of competitors started coming out of the woodworks. None of them came close to Snapchat. Around April-May of 2013, users started sharing 150 million snaps a day, or 1,700 per second. At this point, Snapchat started facing spam problems and made a post about it on their blog. By mid-2013, they had nearly 60 million downloads. In June 2013, Snapchat closed an $80 million Series B investment, which was $60 million for the company and $20 million as a secondary offering. This financing was led by Dennis Phelps, general partner of Institutional Venture Partners, along with 6 other investors. This put Snapchat's valuation at $800 million, an enormous sum for a company that had never earned a cent in revenue. According to several reports in the tech press, Bobby and Evan reportedly got $10 million out of this deal. In October 2013, Snapchat unveiled Snapchat Stories. The stories could be viewed an unlimited number of times until it ran out within 24 hours of being posted and were visible to all their followers. They created stories as a response to the community of people on Snapchat. People wanted a button that allowed them to send a snap to all of their friends or contacts. They noticed a few issues on other social medias. When people would post, the feed would show in reverse chronological order. They felt this didn't make sense because humans have been telling stories in chronological order for thousands of years, so firstly they wanted to create a product in chronological order, and second they noticed people felt a lot of pressure because of likes and comments, so they decided they didn't want to have that. This was also the closest thing that Snapchat had done to recreate the Facebook timeline. At the beginning, stories were described as a huge failure because nobody knew how to use them. In November 2013, Mark reportedly reached out to Evan again, and this time with an offer for Facebook to buy Snap for $3 billion. Once again, Evan rejected it. At this point, Snapchat users were sending 400 million snaps a day, or roughly 4,500 per second. And on the 11th of December that year, they raised a Series C funding of $54.5 million from Catal Management with a valuation of around $123 million. Snapchat also rolled out a feature that allows you to replay a snap a day, and that kind of removes some of its ephemerality. Also in 2013, the Ghostface logo lost its smiley face in a design tweet, and the name was changed to No Face Chiller. At this time, Snapchat was hacked by an anonymous group. The username and phone numbers of 4.6 million users were exposed and people were furious. They still had a reputation for sexting at this point and people were afraid what else might leak. At first, Evan didn't see a need to apologize, but then there was a lot of backlash. The company settled a few months later with the FTC over charges that it misled its users. They apologized for the hack and repaired the breach and promised to work on beefing up security quickly. In May 2014, they launched video calls and direct messaging, or text chat. They also acquired a company called AdLive, a developer-friendly way to integrate live video, voice, and text chat into applications. The chat function helped make Snapchat more of a social media app. In June 2014, they launched Our Story, which lets users who are at the same location add their videos, photos, and doodles to a public feed of snaps from popular events. In August 2014, they launched GeoFilters. This allowed users to customize their content and post their location at the time of a post. At this point, Snapchat is a global phenomenon, and mainly because of its unique demographic. The users were majority female between the ages of 13 and 25. Stories were now getting 1 billion views daily, while 760 million disappearing photos and videos were sent daily. 40% of 18-year-olds in the US were using Snapchat on a daily basis, higher than the number of people who used voice calls. In September 2014, Reggie Brown won the 2-year lawsuit that he had with Snapchat, and he won $157.5 million, $50 million in 2014 and $107.5 million in 2016. October 2014 was the beginning of Snapchat testing advertising. Users started seeing ads in the recent update section alongside all of their friends' stories. Users had the option to skip viewing the ads, and like other stories, they disappeared after 24 hours. At the end of 2014, Snapchat worked with Square to release Snap Cash, which allowed users to easily send and receive money directly and easily through the app to their bank accounts. At this time, Snapchat also included a sponsored story from Samsung and the AMAs in its Our Story section. Although they'd included stories related to the World Cup and Super Bowl, this was the first placement paid for by a brand. In December 2014, Snapchat also tested monetization with its geo filters. Consumers could generate their own geo filters or purchase branded filters for their business or sponsored event. Also, at the end of 2014, leaked emails from Sony Pictures showed that Snapchat was planning a music feature, but they also acquired the QR barcode scanning app Scan.me for $54.5 million. Also, at just 3 years old, Snapchat announces its Series D investment, which values the company at $10 billion. In December 2014, Snap secretly acquires Virgins Labs for $15 million. The company developed glass frames that recorded videos with the press of a sideburn, similar to how Google Glass product did. A line of frames was called Epiphany Eyewear and came in various sizes and storages. Evan and Bobby started working on a new secret sunglass project. The division of the company called Snap Labs was so secretive that only a few people in the company knew that they were even working on a hardware project at all. In January 2015, Snapchat introduced Discover. This allowed users to receive content provided by top media companies in short-form ad content, and 11 participants were included in the launch, including National Geographic, Vice, and ESPN. The app became not just about sharing photos with friends, but sharing everything from Discover articles to chats to life in the moment. By the end of January 2015, Snapchat hit 75 million users. Also in 2015, they started hiring a lot of senior leaders with more experience, although Evan was still in charge of mapping and where it would go next. Around this time, Evan also acknowledged that he wasn't a great manager. He said, "I tried to be a great leader, and for me, that's been going through a lot of process of not how to be a great CEO, but how to be a great Evan." In February 2015, they launched the Snapchat Safety Center, a section of the website with practical tips on how to stay safe while using Snapchat. And in March 2015, they raised $200 million at a pre-money valuation of $14.8 billion, with Alibaba Group as the lead investor in the Series E, along with a few others. In May 2015, they hit 100 million active users and 400 million snaps per day. It was also seeing 2 billion video views a day. In June 2015, Snapchat launched sponsored geo filters to advertisers who wanted to pay for the brand exposure in any given location. McDonald's, GE, and Ted the Movie launched the first sponsored geo filters. Around July 2015, Snapchat removed the hold down to view feature, and this was a core functionality of their app, so it was quite a big deal. Instead, they added tap to view. In September 2015, they launched Snapchat Lens and Face Effects. These were augmented reality filters that were available for use in video and photo capture. They started off with 7 filters that were created internally by the Snapchat team, and they caused Google Trends to spike. After Snapchat acquired Luxury, a company that does facial modification of photos in real time on mobile platforms, it added those famous lenses like the bathing rainbows. The lenses, also known as filters, were really big for selfies. At the end of 2015, Snapchat confirmed that videos was one of the most popular tools on the app. They had 6 billion video views, which was up from 2 billion in May. Their revenue amounted to approximately $60 million. In January 2016, the Whitehouse joined Snapchat, and in total, Snapchat was getting 7 billion video views per day. In March 2016, Snapstreaks came out in Snapchat's Chat 2.0 app update. Also, Snapchat secretly acquired Bitstrips, the company that made bitmojis, which were personalized emojis, or a popular cartoon figure app that had once blown up on Facebook. Chat 2.0 updates include Snapchat Stories auto-advance, moving on to the next story after one has played, and over 200 stickers that could be used in chat messages, video notes, video and audio calls, and multiple photo sending. In April 2016, Snapchat hit a huge milestone of 10 billion video views per day, and in May 2016, reportedly, Google made an offer to buy them for $30 billion. Once again, that offer is rejected. Snapchat raises its Series F funding of $1.8 billion at a pre-money valuation of $17.5 billion from a total of 18 investors, but the funds were reportedly raised over a long period of time. In June 2016, Snapchat hits 150 million daily active users, and that surpasses Twitter. They also rolled out more video ads at this time, and ads started appearing in between friend stories when users started watching them. Around this time, Snapchat acquires Obvious Engineering, a startup working on 3-dimensional face scanning app called Scene. In July 2016, Snapchat adds Memories, which allowed users to save snaps to private storage. Memories made content less spontaneous. Users could save content for editing later on and sharing it, but also help people find all the content that they may have posted. At this point, their collaboration with Bitstrips becomes popular. Users could create and incorporate these into their snaps and into their stories. Their purchase of Bitstrips was confirmed when Miranda Kerr, Evan's fiance, posted an engagement photo onto Instagram with bitmojis on them. In August 2016, Facebook were back at it again. They launched filters and stickers onto its photo app, and Instagram launched stories, which worked pretty much the same as Snapchat at that point. The Instagram CEO Kevin Systrom openly admits that this feature was copied from Snapchat because of the success of Snapchat stories. At this point, Snapchat acquired the mobile app Feud for $110 million, which was a local app helping consumers find local things to do and letting them save their ideas. In September 2016, Snapchat expanded their product offering with hardware products with spectacles. These were smart sunglasses that had a built-in camera. Spectacles would record snaps in a circular format for a 360-degree view. At this point, they officially made a parent company and rebranded to Snap Inc. It was a parent company to Snapchat and Spectacles. Evan started referring to it as a camera company. It was only when Snapchat finally unveiled its spectacles, a surprise internally to the employees as well, that they made it public that they had renamed to Snap Inc. In October 2016, Facebook was back at it once again with a new idea that was going to rival Snapchat, this time testing in Ireland with an ephemeral photo messaging feature available through Facebook Direct Inbox, which was seen as a clone of Snapchat. In December 2016, Snapchat's final innovation of that year was group messaging. The company also opened a research and development center in Shenzhen, China, and they acquired the advertising and technology company Flight, a creative management platform that powers creatives and marketers from top-tier brands, agencies, and publishers for an undisclosed amount. They also acquired the augmented reality star Simigin Media, a platform that lets consumers instantly visualize products they want to buy in their intended locations for between $30 to $40 million. You could probably see already that Evan conducts business in a really private way. He rarely ever holds all-hands meetings, and he doesn't really talk to employees around the office. A lot of the time, employees find out things when the public finds out. He also reportedly walks around the office with security, and in 2016, it was reported that he paid $900,000 for security. In January 2017, Snap Inc. announces that their new international headquarters will be in the UK. In February 2017, Evan and Bobby make a pledge to donate upwards of 13 million shares of Class A common stock over the next 15 to 20 years and create the Snap Foundation. The mission of their foundation is to develop pathways to the creative economy for underrepresented youths in LA. It was reported that in the predicted March 2017 IPO for Snapchat, that Bobby and Evan would hold over 70% of the voting power in the company and around 45% of the total stock. On the 2nd of March 2017, Snap went public with a market cap of $33 billion, and their stock started trading on the New York Stock Exchange. Evan instantly became the youngest self-made billionaire, and the next day, his net worth increased by $1.6 billion when Snap's share price jumped by 44% on the first day. Bobby became the second youngest billionaire, after Evan. In the filing, this is where the information came out about the amount that Snapchat paid to make Reggie disappear, which was nearly $158 million. In June 2017, Snapchat launched Snap Map, which made location sharing easier by letting users share their current location, which appears to friends on a map and updates you when you open Snapchat. In 2017, according to Bloomberg, Evan was the best paid CEO of that year by making $504 million. In mid-2017, Evan also eventually addressed Facebook's copying of Snapchat. He said, "At the end of the day, just because Yahoo has a search box, it doesn't mean they're Google. You have to get comfortable with and enjoy the fact that someone is going to copy you if you make great stuff." In early 2018, they brought an additional 8.9 million daily active users, bringing the total after the IPO to 187 million users. In February 2018, Snapchat rolled out a redesign that was massively unpopular with users. It changed the way stories were displayed to an algorithmic feed. The decision had huge backlash, with users complaining that they couldn't find their friends on the feed anymore. It led to the user count to shrink, the stock to fall, and employee layoffs to follow. The backlash was so large that in April 2018, over 1.2 million people signed an official Change.org petition to bring back the old chronological feed in Snapchat. Kylie Jenner even publicly criticized the app by tweeting, "So, does anyone else not use Snapchat anymore, or is it just me? Oh, this is so sad." She was the most followed person on Snapchat, and this wiped $1.5 billion of Snapchat's market value. Miranda Kerr, Evan's wife, also said she hated the redesign, and in April 2018, they changed it back to the chronological order feed. Later on, Evan said that he didn't regret the design decision because it drove more people to their premium content side of Snapchat. Although 2018 was difficult, Snapchat rebounded in 2019 to recover losses to the share price. By 2018, 99% of Snap Inc.'s total revenue came from advertising, according to the company's internal financials. On April 4th, 2019, Snapchat hosted its first ever Snap Partner Summit. In June 2019, Snapchat was valued at nearly $15 billion. Also around this time, reports came out that Snapchat was keeping a dossier on Facebook that outlined the many ways that Facebook had engaged in anti-competitive behavior against Snapchat. When asked, Evan said their legal team had a sense of humor, so it was called the Voldemort dossier. He said that they heard so many stories that they just started collecting this information and putting it in one place. In 2019, they moved office again from Venice Boardwalk to Santa Monica. More recently, in 2019, TikTok, the viral video sharing app, was becoming more popular. While Mark Zuckerberg is said to have labeled it as a competitor, Evan said he considers it more of a friend to help people spend more time on their phones. At the end of 2020, Snap Inc. rolled out a new feature called Spotlight, a TikTok-like feed that allows users to share short-form videos publicly. The tables turned a bit in in August 2021 when TikTok started copying the story feature of Snapchat. As of June 2020, there's an average of 238 million people who are using Snapchat every day. This is an increase of 35 million, or 17% increase year on year. In July 2020, Snapchat was the 6th most popular messaging app worldwide with 398 million active monthly users. WhatsApp is the world's most popular messaging app with 2 billion active monthly users. Snapchat is the world's 13th most popular social media platform, and on average, Snapchatters open the app more than 30 times per day. Also, the US is the biggest market, followed by India and France. Over 210 million snaps are created every single day. Finally, I'm going to touch on where the founders are now, starting with Reggie Brown. After the Snapchat settlement, Reggie seems to have kept a very low profile. He doesn't seem to keep in the public eye and also doesn't seem to have any public social media platforms. He must have had some relief after winning the settlement when Snapchat came out with a statement saying it was his original idea, but of course it might also hurt seeing his two co-founders become two of the youngest billionaires ever. In July 2013, he went to Duke University's business school and completed the 10-month master's degree program in management studies in May 2014. He also filed applications to incorporate two limited liability companies, one in April 2012 called FRBIV based in Columbia, South Carolina, and one in December 2016 in Isle of Palm, South Carolina called Rita Brown. Records also seem to indicate that he now lives in Columbia, South Carolina. In terms of Bobby Murphy, he also seems to have kept a relatively low profile. He's only given a handful of interviews and little is known about his personal life. His only public social media account is his Twitter profile, and he made his first TV appearance on The Colbert Show with Evan in 2013. People who've worked with Bobby describe him as friendly, quiet, and smart. David Crafts, Snapchat's first hire, told Forbes in 2015, "I'd describe him almost like a monk. I don't think I've ever seen him upset." He was named as one of the 100 most influential people in 2014 by Time. In 2015, as mentioned earlier, Bobby became the second youngest self-made billionaire in the world and was recorded as the 1,250th richest person in the world. In December 2013, he bought a house for $2 million in Venice, California, and he married his long-term girlfriend Kelsey Bateman, who he met in first year of university. As Snapchat's chief technology officer, he's responsible for their engineering teams, and sources say he also works very closely with Snap Labs. In 2021, it was reported that he purchased a property on Manhattan Beach Strand for $14.5 million. Finally, on to Evan Spiegel, who is the most famous of the trio. As well as keeping his business dealings in private, he also likes to maintain a semi-private personal life. In the past, Evan joked that he wouldn't move out of his father's house until he got kicked out, but in November 2014, he bought a 3-bed multi-million-dollar house in Brentwood, LA, which was less than 4 miles away from his dad's place. In June 2015, he also bought himself a Ferrari, and that same year, Vogue Italy magazine featured him on the cover photo. In the summer of 2015, he got into a relationship with the famous Australian model Miranda Kerr, and this was a year after meeting at a Louis Vuitton event in New York. They had a secret ceremony for their engagement with only close friends and family. In May 2016, Evan and Miranda purchased a $12 million home in Brentwood, and that was previously owned by the American actor and producer Harrison Ford, which has a gym, pool, and guest house. In May 2017, they got married in their back garden with less than 50 guests in attendance. They honeymooned on a private island in Fiji in a resort owned by the Red Bull billionaire. In May 2018, Miranda and Evan had a son, and they called him Hart. On July 2018, Evan revealed to Stay Tuned, NBC's news show on Snapchat, that he completed his degree requirements and graduated from Stanford in 2018. Evan and his son have been French citizens since 2018, and this was granted through a rare process of foreign nationals who have taken exceptional action for France. In October 2019, they had another son, and they called him Miles. Evan is interested in the music industry, and in 2014, they reported potentially making a music label out of Snapchat. He reportedly wanted to buy the Big Machine record company that represents Taylor Swift, but the deal fell through. He's a licensed helicopter pilot and loves floristry. He describes himself as very shy and rarely interacts with his employees because he finds it quite intimidating and he's quite awkward. As mentioned, he was the youngest self-made billionaire in 2017, and Forbes magazine placed him in the richest people in the world. Finally, Evan recognizes that he's hit life's jackpot and got really lucky. He said, "I'm a young, white, educated male. I got really lucky and life isn't fair. It's not about working harder, it's about working the system." So that was it, the story of Snapchat. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to put all your opinions in the comments. Once again, let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see in the future.